Hello and welcome to the People Performance Podcast with me, Bernice Casserly.
And me, James Cooper.
Good morning, James.
Good morning, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, it's Happy Monday, so it's good.
Yeah, definitely. And this podcast fits perfectly with the week as well. So what week is it, James?
Well, it's Neurodiversity Week.
It is indeed.
And it's interesting to get our points of view on, is from our perspective, what does it mean to us at T2? And then starting to think about, hold on a minute. Let's go to the wider audience and see what they say as well.
Yeah.
So what are we talking about today then, if it is Neurodiversity Week, Bernice?
Mm-hmm. So today we will have a conversation around actually what is neurodiversity. I think that's something that's really important to be able to understand the definition behind that.
Okay.
When we talk about definitions, there's also the consideration around jargon. What is the right terminology? What's the right language that should be used when exploring and discussing all of this? I think one thing that's really important is just recognising some of the different conditions or the different types of neurodiversity. But one thing that's really important, and we'll discuss today as well, is the importance of recognising the strengths behind all of this. And we'll look at why it's even important as well.
I don't know about you, Bernice, but I've been in workshops. I think it's been the last, maybe, I'm going to say 7 workshops where I've had either a concerned parent or a concerned individual around, what does this mean from a neurodiversity perspective? Is there anything that I can do to help with that? And I go, right, let's get into the content and then see what links we can make.
Yeah.
It was quite interesting a couple of weeks back. I don't know how you found it, but we actually went on the neurodiversity awareness, didn't we?
Yeah, so something that we were seeing more of when it came to engaging with clients that we work with is that actually what can we do to ensure that we create the very best neuro-inclusive training environment so that people can truly learn, so that they can grow and develop. I think we've all had experiences when we have been running a workshop, or for some of us, even just when we've been having one-to-one coaching sessions, the more conversations about all of this was happening. And we very much at T2 strive to be the best, and we want to be world class, and I'd like to consider that we are.
Yeah.
So therefore, something that I was tasked with was actually looking at, is there any training out there? And what was really interesting when I was researching is there was so much training and guidance around just awareness of neurodiversity, but actually very little in regards to training practices and learning. So we got in contact with a company called the Neurodiversity Specialists, and they've been really fantastic to really help us understand this to a deeper level so that we can support our learners better. So that workshop was a half-day workshop for every single person, no matter what role in which you worked at T2. And it was really valuable and beneficial. Would you agree?
I think it really opened my eyes to, I think going back to a personal level.
Yeah.
And starting to consider, what does this mean for me? And it's good that we were sat the other side of the desk, if you like.
Oh, yeah. It was
and actually getting into some of the detail and going, right, what does this mean for me then? And then is there something that we can consider, which I know we're going to get into later. But for me on a personal level, it was understanding that, you know what? I think I'm a little bit neurodiverse. I think there's something in that. And I think that's the point from today's podcast as well. Now, the reason why we're maybe mentioning some of these things is because sometimes you can get caught up in the language, in the sort of the nuances of stuff, and really getting into the detail around what does it mean, what are the do's and what are some of the don'ts, if you like, around neurodiversity.
Yeah. So if we jump straight into that, James, so looking at that definition, if we're looking at let me try that again, Tom. I don't know what I was trying to say there. So let's jump into that, James, and take a look at actually what is neurodiversity. So what I'm going to do is actually we're going to refer to how it was described to us by the neurodiversity specialist. So neurodiversity is the idea that cognitive conditions such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia and dyspraxia are actually natural variations simply in the way people think and process information and the way in which we experience our external and internal world.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's the individual part for me. Is that, well, it's not just one way suits all or one shoe fits everybody. It's like starting to look into the details of what it is for everyone, and is there something else we might need to consider internally and externally, by the way.
Yes.
So what's some of the language that we might need to consider then? And from a definition perspective, what other sort of language bits might we need to be aware of?
I think that's a really good question, James, because there is a lot of different language out there. There's neurodivergent, neurotypical, neuromajority, neuroinclusive. And it can get a little bit confusing because it's important that we're able to use the right language. Something that is mentioned a lot, though, is neurodivergent versus neurotypical.
Right, so let's get into a bit of neurodivergent then versus neurotypical.
Yeah.
And why do we need to be aware of these two terms that we've experienced? And I think even from the workshop, what were our learnings from that?
Yeah, I think we can all be guilty of it if we don't have the right knowledge around what good looks like. I think the key thing when we look at neurodivergent versus neurotypical is you're excluding people and you're saying that there's it's not about inclusivity. So if you're referring to someone as neurodivergent, then that can sometimes be seen as something negative, or you're focused on disorders. Neurotypical is are you defining someone as normal?
What is normal?
Well, this is it.
Yeah.
When it comes to neurodiversity, it's recognizing that we're all human. And as humans, we all think and feel and process the world in different ways. So it simply is around recognizing the differences that we all experience during that. It's not about difficulty, it's about what's the difference.
Okay, so some of these five, we've got sort of 5 significant differences that we might need to be aware of. Well, really, let's start to look at internal and external as the first 2 if you wanted to. So if it is that when you are talking about your senses, you've got external senses and understanding that obviously that's sight, hearing, touch, taste and smell. And then if you start to really go into the detail of number 2, so that would be internal senses. So you're talking about temperature, balance, pain, proprioception. And just for everybody out there, proprioception, I've got it as is definition, but perception or awareness of the position and movement of the body. Now, if we haven't considered those as internal and external senses, well, is that something that we could start to really look at in a little bit more detail and understanding that everybody would see, feel, touch, taste and smell, and all of those different elements in different ways? Number 3 then is feel or managing emotions. Now, we work a lot with big groups, small groups, one-to-ones. I think you guys were at a really big event for an organisation in Leeds the other week, and it's about understanding that every single person might feel or tap into those and manage their emotions slightly differently.
Yeah, of course.
Can make links back to the chimp paradox there and managing your chimp. And then you can start to really think at number 4, which is the process or managing of information.
Yes.
So how do you manage, or how do all of us manage and process information? And then finally, number 5, using different aspects of memory.
Yeah.
I know that if I need to learn something, it's got to be in a quiet space. I need to be reading it. I need to be listening to it. I need to be making notes on it. For other people, we can talk about other people within this organisation. Yeah. I don't know about you, Bernice, but some people inhale books.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like they read it, they're reading for purpose, and it goes straight in. Then they can come up with a really good idea of what it might be for them and how it can impact other people in their organisation. And then there's always that one person that, you know what, I don't read books. where do you sit on that?
So for me, I don't mind in sharing. I can definitely recognise a lot of connections to ADHD.
Yeah.
Even kind of when I reflect on childhood as well, a lot of things there. I very much am someone where I, in certain situations, struggle to focus. For me as well, I have to really I can hyper focus on things really well. It's almost like it's like a switch. I am someone who I really feel as though it takes a long time for me to get something in my memory. However, I can certainly think of someone in my wider family who has autism. And the things that they're able to retain, like so much fantastic knowledge and information. Such an intelligent person, but I can definitely see a difference there. But the reality is, all of us, no matter who you are, whether or not you have been diagnosed or you have self-identified with any of this, we all do all of these things in various different ways.
And I think that's the point, is understanding the way that people work, right?
Yes, definitely. And I think one thing that I love is about difference.
Yeah. I think that there's that many people out there that seem to focus on some of the challenges that people have got. But before we get into the strengths and what this could potentially bring for organisations and for us at T2 as well, we'll obviously share that with people. Why do we need to be aware of it though? Why is it important to be aware of it?
It's incredibly important. I mean, for some organisations, they're trying to advocate and do a lot more. Some organisations aren't doing anything. But it's really important because research shows that is a bit up for debate, actually, because some research states 1 in 5 people are neurodiverse. Some research actually suggests it's 1 in 7 people who are neurodiverse. It's something that I think, one thing that really interested me and let me try that again. One thing that I found really interesting was when we were sitting in on the neuro-inclusive training practices course, that every single one of us had a connection to all of this. So if most human beings have a connection to this topic, then of course it's really important.
I think even from that impact on not just families and it's everybody, isn't it?
Yes,
it's everybody. It's we can't just put this down to one specific situation where this is going to be the biggest thing. Understanding that this could impact everybody on a day-to-day basis, and even some of the strategies that people have got in place for not being able to talk.
Yes.
If it is the organisation, and I know that we've got what's this fact from CPD?
Yeah, so CIPD Neurodiversity Report for 2024, they identified that it's actually 51% of managers value neurodiversity and actually see it as an importance to be neuro-inclusive. And that's quite surprising. So you're saying half of managers don't think that there's value in having neurodiverse employees, and they also don't think it important to be and create a neuro-inclusive work environment.
I just think that number should be a bit higher.
Significantly higher.
Imagine if we didn't consider it at all, then in an organisation that is that, if there's 51% that are saying that they do, there's 49% that is from CIPD that are saying that actually we don't need to consider it. Well, what do those environments potentially look like then? Because if I was for someone that might be self-diagnosing this in their organisation, what's the potential impact of not doing anything?
Yes.
And then we can flip it and then see what good looks like, Bernice.
Yeah, because I think if I'm someone working in an organisation and either I've been diagnosed or I self-identify with any of these It might be that actually I don't feel as though I can tell anyone. I don't think that you as my manager values this, or you might see it as a weakness. So therefore, actually, I'm not even going to talk about it, and I might hide and conceal it. And one thing that really kind of upsets me in a way is when we've worked with some of the clients and organizations that we're partnered with, especially sometimes we see it quite often on one-to-one, is someone might disclose something in a one-to-one. However, their manager doesn't know because they feel as though they can't talk about it because it would be seen as a weakness, or someone's going to judge them or view them in a negative light. But actually, there is so much value that neurodiversity does bring to the workplace.
So imagine if we got to the stage where that percentage goes from 51 to 80 plus, 90s. What are some of the things that, well, I know from my perspective, I know that if somebody understood neurodiversity and had, I'm not saying they have to be an expert, but have stayed curious and done a little bit of research into it, and maybe even just listened to this and just gone, well, what are some of the things that I can get from this podcast? Well, think about it. If you understand, not to the mass degree, but understand just a little bit more about neurodiversity, how is that going to make that person feel? Well, actually, I feel supported because you've listened and you've actually taken into consideration that reasonable adjustment, which we'll come to later, but understanding that if I am supported by you, and I was supporting you, Bernice, then I'd be going, you know what, I now feel valued in the organisation. Not just feeling valued, but actually I'm understood. And it's not that I'm bringing a different way of looking at the world, but it is. Everybody looks at the world in a totally different way. But for an impact in a team then, if I feel supported, if I feel understood, and actually I am valued, what impact could that have then?
Huge impact. I mean, just look at the sheer amount of work that we do around the importance of psychological safety. If someone feels supported, they feel listened to, they feel understood, then they're going to feel safer. And if they feel safe, then they're going to be more of their authentic self. They're going to speak up more. They're going to feel connected to other people. And we know that the research shows that those who feel psychologically safe in that work environment, they're going to be more productive, they're going to be more efficient. If someone's more productive and more efficient, that's going to lead to higher levels of performance as well. And that's what every single organisation is striving to achieve.
Now, if you imagine that, productivity goes up. In what way? In what way could we increase that and maybe embrace that neurodiversity rather than obviously not even being aware of it and being a little bit of a taboo subject for some organisations? I'm not saying there will be some people out there, Bernice, in the 51% that, you know what, they take it on board, they do what they need to, they make the reasonable adjustments, and actually they see some of these strengths that the neurodiversity individuals can bring to the table. And remember, everybody in some way, shape or form is on that sort of diversity, neurodiversity levels. But let's just take a little bit of a look at the strengths. So what are some of these strengths that we might be looking at then?
Well, I think when it comes to strengths of having when it comes to the strengths of neurodiversity, it's acknowledging that for all of us, our brains work differently. It's about the variations that we mentioned earlier. So what we can also do is focus on different types of neurodiversity and then look at the strengths, because there's various different ones we can look at. So if we take a look at dyslexia, so research shows that dyslexia affects over 10% of adults within the UK. Primarily, this is something that impacts reading, writing, spelling, and just the way in which you're able to process information. So, strengths.
So if we got into it and we understood that if we made some reasonable adjustments and we just understood it a little bit more, then some of the strengths that you could potentially get from somebody is dyslexic is their ability to solve problems, So think about that. If you've got an organisation that hasn't got many really good problem solvers, they could have creative thinking, being observant, working well with others and groups, which of course we need for team cohesion, understanding where the learning fits into a bigger picture, because it's not about the granular details. Sometimes they might struggle with that, but when the big picture stuff comes up, they can see it. Good making connections between topics. So if you've got lots of different faculties, if you like, or different parts of an organisation, you might be able to make some really good links. Then looking at strong narrative of reasoning, well, yeah, I can see why I would do that, and understanding, again, what the bigger picture means. And then that 3-dimensional thinking. So all strengths of being dyslexic.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Moving on to another one, dysgraphia. So dysgraphia is a difference that affects writing abilities. So it can manifest in a variety of different ways as well.
Thinking about strengths, good verbal communication skills.
Yeah.
So if it's not your strength to write things down, well, they're probably really good at talking.
Yeah, definitely.
Also, think about that other sense of listening. What can you hear? So good listeners. Recall oral details, good memories. Storytelling is normally quite a little bit of it's a really quite a superpower of or a strength of dysgraphia. Able to solve problems, able to thrive in social situations. Imagine that, people that love being in the big rooms.
Oh, yeah.
And then determined.
Going
to get it done. So all of the strength that can come from that.
Yeah, nice. I think another one that is possibly spoken about, it's seen as kind of I really can't get my words out today, Tom. So, I've got lots of editing to do on this one. Let's focus on another one then, and let's take a look at ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. So this is something that affects attention. It can result in someone to be quite impulsive in certain situations. A lot of talk around hyperactivity, hyperfocus. But with this one in particular, because I can certainly reflect and think of even growing up, it was seen as the naughty kids, and that was something that it's just so bad that language was used. And it isn't about that. It's just, again, it's that learning difference.
Yeah.
So some of the strengths of ADHD, James.
Massive creative thinking. Innovation and creating new ideas.
Yeah.
So we've got that hyper focus, or the ability to hyper focus when topics high interest.
Yes.
So if it is interesting, and it's interesting to the individual themselves, and remember it needs to be individual, then you're starting to think, right, if it's high interest, I'm all over it. And then bringing that high energy and productivity as a strength.
Yeah.
That's just who they are if we're considering this neurodiversity. So yeah, really, I think again, I can make some links to that ADHD, and if there is anybody sort of thinking about it, it's interesting to have that conversation for me.
Yeah.
We've had a conversation about it already, but what could be the next one if you was going to consider something else?
Another one is Sorry, Tom. How do I pronounce it? Dyscalculia. Another one is dyscalculia, which primarily affects someone's individual ability to be able to understand things more from a number perspective.
Yeah.
So anything to do with numbers or mathematics, this is something that they have a difference with the processing.
Okay, so think about good verbal communication again, and then good written communication.
Yeah.
So if it is reading competency or so you've got the strengths of that are good verbal communication skills, good written communication skills, which would make sense, right? Yeah. And then reading comprehension, the ability to retain information. So would it be that those people that can inhale those books, maybe slightly neurodiverse from this point of view? Remembering printed words, can remember it. Creative thinking again, able to solve problems, understanding their learning and how it fits into the bigger picture. Yeah. I think that's, again, as a strengths point of view, even if it is neurodiversity, there's a lot of things on there that be on a job spec. And you'd be
100%.
looking at it going, yeah, get them in.
Definitely, 100%. Dyspraxia typically impacts movement, coordination,
Yeah.
and this is one that ties into those internal senses in regards to balance and movement, and some of those gross motor skills.
So thinking of the strengths from that then, if we obviously taking into consideration neurodiversity, it's that creative and original thinking. So those different ideas, good strategic thinking and problem solving.
Yeah.
Again, determined and hardworking, highly motivated and able to develop own strategies to overcome learning challenges.
And I think recognizing that there was someone who believes that they potentially could self-identify as dyspraxic in our team at T2, every one of those strengths that you've just described there, that person ticks every single one of those things. And it's a fantastic quality that person brings. And another one that we've not mentioned as well is autism or autism spectrum disorder, very much characterized around the differences in social interaction, communication. This can have an influence on the way in which someone processes sensory things as well.
Yeah, so if you think about it from an autism point of view, good attention to detail.
Yeah.
Thinks logically. Independent thinking, good visual processing ability, loyal, honest.
Yeah.
You know what? Give me loyal and honest any day over the lies and fibbers.
Yeah.
And then above average intelligence, highly skilled in a particular area. So focus on that one individual area.
Yeah.
So highly skilled in it as well. Now, again, if I'm looking at all of these neurodiverse, and there is others, isn't there?
Oh yeah.
But we're just going to touch on those 6. If it is that we started to consider what if we had those people and we maximised and understood neurodiversity, what's the potential impact of that then? Because that productivity goes through the roof. If you've got somebody that's very logical, thinks in a lot of detail, well, where do I put them? Where can I position that person within the organisation so that it then serves as well?
Definitely.
Is it that we just need to embrace that and then start to think, right, where can this really work for us, rather than not necessarily understanding it and then having it as small challenges?
Yeah.
I
think it's important we talk, we know with one of the psychometric tools that we use that there's sometimes conversations around role alignment.
Yeah.
Just how important it is for, as an individual, whoever you are, whatever your background and experience, that you're able to go and be in that environment and feel as though it aligns to who you are as a person. If I was someone who is neurodiverse and my job doesn't align to who I am and the way in which I process the world around me, that's going to be a really big struggle. And that's also not going to have a positive impact on productivity and performance either.
So if we think about it then, what can organisations do? What's the plan, Bernice?
Well, I think the first thing that we need to do is recognise the importance of it. It is important, and we really need to focus on boosting up the percentage of managers who think it's important and actually value having a neuro-inclusive work environment.
And I think it comes back down to, well, even from the course that we went through, it seems to always boil down to the same thing that we talk about a lot, which is the person.
Yes.
Individual specific needs for the individual to actually go, you know what, I can see the strengths in what you do and how you do it, and this is how we're going to try and help. This is how we're going to support, how we're going to value you and what you bring to the table.
Yeah.
To drive, obviously, productivity.
Yeah.
Now, what do we do?
I think what was quite nice is it was nice for Emma from the Neurodiversity Specialist to actually, she was a little bit impressed, which was quite nice with some of the things that we already do. But it also was really interesting to think, right, okay, so in the future, as we continue to grow, and also as well, we are in the process of purchasing the building. So T2 Towers will be an official pinpoint on the map. But that will be fantastic for us as we grow and expand our space. When people even come in person to visit us here at T2 Towers, that we can do so much more to support neurodiversity. But one of the things that we've done and had a lot of investment in is the T2 Hub. So
if you haven't been on the T2 Hub and you are a partner and an existing customer, I would urge you just right now, and even if you are neurodiverse, which we all potentially are, go and have a look and really experience the hub itself.
Yeah.
Because there's so much stuff on there, isn't there?
Oh, yeah. And for anyone who has just listened to this podcast or they're watching us for the very first time, so one of the things that we provide our clients and partners is access to this online platform, and there's lots of data, detail, there's even surveys you can do, research that goes onto the online hub to support people throughout that learning journey.
Yeah.
So with the T2 Hub, what are some of the things that helps create that neuro-inclusive learning environment?
And again, go on it, because it's amazing to think that we've considered this before doing the actual course itself. And so we've got colour changes on there. So if there is a certain blend of colours, I know I'm colourblind, so it's, for me, sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge for me to read text.
Yes.
So even from a neurodiversity level, that can be quite a big thing for individuals. So if you can change the colour and it makes it a little bit easier for you to read it, perfect, done.
Yeah.
We've got the audio text reading function.
Yes.
Which then literally reads out the text as you're scrolling through the pages and assistance. You've got a screen mask. What was the screen mask?
So screen mask I really like. So the screen mask is great because I know for me in certain situations, if let's say, for example, there's lots of fantastic articles on the T2 Hub, or we call them pathways. And I know for me personally, if I'm looking at a screen and there's lots of text, I really value when it's broken down, like use of like paragraphs is really helpful for me. But even still, if I'm looking at a page where it's all full of text and it's all written, my brain can sometimes struggle with processing all of that. It can take me a long time to read it. So the screen mask, what it does is it basically lets you just almost ignore, it blocks out everything on the screen. And with your mouse, when you scroll down, it will show you just that sentence, just that paragraph.
Yeah.
So just a short chunk of information, for me, really valuable and helpful, because it means that I can just focus on simply only the text that I can see. So that's really valuable. You can change the colour backgrounds on that as well, which is really good. Yeah.
And then I think one of the best parts of the T2 Hub was actually a page summariser.
Yeah.
Because obviously some people can get lost in the detail and end up going off on tangents. Yeah. Or maybe they just struggle to process that information when it's big blocks of text. Mm-hmm. Well, if it is that you just wanted a summary, got a page summariser on there. Yeah. Click the button. Summary done.
Really useful. Yeah.
I wish I'd have had it when I was reading for some of the university stuff.
Oh, my goodness.
Just summarise that for me.
Oh, cheers. Yeah, that's been amazing when I did my degree, 100%.
Now, we've obviously got, and for everybody that's listening or watching this now, it's then, well, okay, how is this helping? Our videos and our podcasts, how is that helping some of the people that, well, I know it definitely benefits me to rewind and go back over all discussions we've had in this very room.
Yeah.
But is that going to help? Does that help people, having videos and podcasts?
Definitely. Even something that we explore is we all learn in different ways. And this is all that we've been talking about today. It's recognise that we all see and view and process the world around us differently. For some people, reading. So if you are someone who really values being able to just take your own time to read something, the likelihood is we've got it. We can cover it through our pathways on the T2 Hub. For some people, they like to listen. So actually, I really struggled to be able to process and go through that written text. However, if I know that I can listen to a people performance podcast, actually, that's where I can get lots of value.
Yeah, and I think even when we talk about the spaces that we create, or from an organisational point of view in the rooms, I know we're obviously preparing for the sort of changes and some of the tweaks that we can make to this space that we're in now. But if it is that organisations are looking at, right, what does good look like from a spaces point of view and from a office environment?
Yeah.
And there's obviously got massive organisations that have different spaces and different challenges with the spaces that they work in. From a neurodiversity perspective, what are the considerations we can make to just space?
It's just space. Even just thinking around setup, layout for some people, having the opportunity to go to a quiet area is really valuable if someone feels as though they're getting overstimulated. Something that works for some people is even just thinking about equipment. So if we don't have the opportunity to create a small quiet area for someone, noise cancelling headphones. Something so simple but can be so valuable.
That'd come into that reasonable adjustment, right?
Definitely.
So if that does come into the reasonable adjustment, what else might be in there? Well, and again, this is where we can't preach, can we?
No.
It's that understand this person, listen to them. What is it for them? Because again, this isn't just one shoe fits all. It doesn't. No. It can't be. But if there is some of the considerations we have in workshops and when we're communicating with people, I think even if I just reduce the distractions, for lots of people that are, some of the delivery that we have in big inner cities, and you've got roadworks going on outside, you've got loads of people that are bustling around on busy streets or office spaces where there's lots of traffic.
Yeah,
I know I've definitely seen in the past where some people they're looking around, getting distracted by things, and you're in a one-to-one session with them, and it's not because they're ignoring you, it's just that they just needed it to be a little bit more quiet so that they could stay concentrated and
there's always
focused.
Almost two ways that we're looking at is about eliminating visual distractions. So even just clutter. If there's lots of clutter around the office, that's going to be a potential distraction for people. And that and also as well thinking about sound. So how do we reduce some of those distractions as well?
Those noises. And I think as we start to get into more of the detail around how we speak to people and how others can communicate, well, what is it? What does good look like? Well, I know from feedback I've received, I'm going to be real honest here, is that if it is that I'm asking more and more and more and more and more and more questions, well, actually that blurs the water for people. They can't see the message that I'm actually delivering sometimes. So if it is that I have to consider that and think about how the message is landing, I know from a senior consultant point of view, both of us sat here going, is it clear? Is it direct? Then also there's the flip side of that coin when you start to think of how do we tell stories?
Yeah. Because one thing that we went through during the training, James, you'll probably remember this, and it was so good, but eye-opening, challenging at the same time, is the neurodiversity specialists. They set up just these small little challenges just to help us all recognise that challenge and how difficult it can be for certain individuals. And I remember there was one particular one that we worked through, and that particular challenge I really struggled with. Like my brain just could not connect and tie up the dots and focus. And it then, because I didn't understand what we were doing and how it all worked, it was really difficult. I just checked out of that little activity. And we had a really open discussion around, for certain individuals, they see things and need to see things visually. I would like to think that we're able to create visual kind of pictures in people's brains in some of the workshops that we deliver. I know I love telling stories myself. But that said, it's really important when we are creating that neuro-inclusive learning environment that everyone has the opportunity to be able to process and understand the stories that we tell and even the models and theories that we bring to people.
And I think as a strapline then, as humans, we all have a unique way of processing information.
Definitely.
And I think if everybody remembers that, so anybody that's listening is just understanding that it is very much an individual thing. And all we need to start to do is recognise that and start to be aware of it. So if I was to summarise all of this detail that we've just been through, Bernice, what would be the 3 things that for anybody listening or watching that they'd need to take away and start to think about or consider?
I think firstly is we all need to prioritise boosting that percentage. So from that CIPD, Neurodiversity in the Workplace report from 2024, we 100% need to get that number above 51% of people who view it as important and actually recognise and see the value of neurodiversity. Every single one of us, neurodiversity influences and impacts us all in so many ways, whether it be you personally, someone in your team, whether it be a family member or a friend. It's important and we all need to prioritise it.
And I think coming off the back of that then, it's creating those safe spaces to have the conversation.
Yeah.
Not just pushing it to a side, actually having conversations going, look, this is going to be the space where we're going to discuss this. If anybody wants to have a conversation afterwards, then come to me directly. Then we can start to consider the reasonable adjustments that we might be able to make for you.
Because we can only do that if we are able to have those conversations.
Yeah.
And it's hard, really. It's sad to hear that for so many people, they feel as though they can't speak up or they can't be honest and they can't talk about their needs. But it's really important because, again, we're all different and we all have different needs and ways in which we view the world.
And I just want to hold on that, because if people are attending T2 courses, if it is that you sent myself, you, or some of the client services, just a little message to say, by the way, I've self-diagnosed that this is what I'm thinking of. I potentially might have ADHD, for example. Oh, fine. As long as you let us know that, then we can prepare and we'll facilitate everything on the hub and more to help you to understand it.
Yeah, and so if that is something that anyone does recognise with, so on the T2 Hub, when you're logged into the T2 Hub, if you were to look at the top right-hand corner, there's a chat feature on there, so you can reach out and you can chat with us, but there's a button that says support. If you click on that button, it then comes up and says learning considerations. On there, you can just fill in and provide any information. And something that we're also looking at, deepening and advancing our knowledge and support on neurodiversity. So we're having discussions around actually having neuro-inclusive champions at T2.
Nice.
So it may be in the future, but if we do go down that path and route, that we can then have a conversation so that we can really understand exactly what you need so that we can provide the very best support.
And I think, imagine that, because obviously with the presentations and the stuff that we deliver, it's obviously the colour is considered. The colour of considerations,
of
and they're already in place. But for the final point I think we should land on, Bernice, is about the strengths.
Yeah.
If you get this right for the individual, the strengths that they can bring to your organisation, to your team, to the communication, whatever it is, that individual will bring their best self. They'll bring, and we use that language in a different way, but this is their best. So instead of focusing on some of the potential challenges
or weaknesses, that drives me mad. I hate it.
But think about it's not focusing on that. It's actually focused on what we want to try and get from them. What are the things that we can do to facilitate, make those reasonable adjustments, and then go forward and push forward and move forward as a collective, with further deeper understanding.
Definitely, and I think it's quite eye-opening, just the sheer amount of adults that do mask and try to hide some of their superpower, let's say. For me personally, I was working with a client, and for that particular client, they have various networking groups on various different types of things. And I was running a session for their disability networking group. And majority of people on that workshop that day were neurodiverse. And every single one of them was able to connect with. In certain situations, I see it as a weakness, or I see as though people are going to judge me, or I'm going to be held back because of this. And something that I was really pushing on that day was actually, we all need to just embrace this, because as human beings, we are designed to, we all think feel in various different ways, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
And it's so important that we're able to focus on the value and the strengths, as you said, James. It's not about challenge and difficulty and weakness. It's about actually recognizing, what does this person need and how do we provide that?
Okay.
It's as simple as that.
I think we've pretty much covered a lot of content in there.
We have.
And I think in the Neurodiversity Week, I'd just urge people to stay curious around this subject.
Yeah.
And obviously don't just use the week. Carry it on forward and go again.
Definitely. And start having conversations.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, thank you, James.
Thank you, Bernice.
I've really enjoyed this podcast. And for anyone listening, if you are thinking about just additional needs that you have or different ways in which we can help better support and create neuro-inclusive learning environments, then please do use that support button on the T2 Hub. Use the support feature in the tool so that you can maximise that use. And yeah,
definitely.
We'll be back soon for another Pupil Performance podcast.
Goodbye.